Well, hello, everyone. Thanks to all of you who are joining us today. My name is Dalia Spasova. I'm part of the developer marketing team here at Kong, and I'd like to welcome you all to our July user call. So today we have a very special presentation for you coming from Sven Walther, who is the Principal Solutions Engineer here in EMEA. He will talk to us about how to use OpenAPI to automatically configure the Kong gateway. So we will take all the questions in the end of the presentation. Please feel free to drop them in the Q&A section or in the chat. At the end of the presentation, I will also fix the settings so you can unmute yourself and ask the questions if you'd like. And yeah, with that, I will hand it over to Sven. Take it away, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so hello, my name is Sven, based out of Berlin. As already having mentioned, I'm a Principal Solutions Engineer here at Kong, meaning in my daily work, I'm doing presentations and workshops with possible customers. And one of the major topics we have is there about automation. So today's session will be about how can we automate the full configuration of the Kong gateway only based on an OpenAPI file without doing anything manual in between. In general, this talk will be less than an hour. So we have an hour blocked, so we will take way less than an hour. So we'll have plenty of time for questions afterwards. And if you finish early, that would also be fine. So let's get started. And I also see questions, so just ask them and we will answer them later on. So first of all, let's talk about one more thing. The one more thing is we as Kong, we are hosting our summit, our conference in San Francisco. And the good news is this year it's once again in San Francisco. So it has been virtual the last 2 times because, well, we all know why. And it's coming back to being in person one in San Francisco. So if you want to see customers, users talking about use cases and so on, and seeing the exciting new things happening, yeah, check out it here. The link has just been posted into our chat there, so you can just register there. So let's start thinking about what is one of the major use cases why Kong is that successful. I'm personally in the API management space since many years, and one of the reasons why I have joined Kong roughly 4 years ago in the early days is exactly about this one statement. And those having seen me in the past, I know I'm telling this every time I'm showing Kong. Everything in Kong is an API. Really, everything is an API. So we have been built from the ground up, being automated in every kind of aspect. For you as the open source users, that's even the only way to configure it. Everything is an API, so you would have no user interface, nothing to click. You do everything in an automated fashion anyway. So let's try first working with that API and create a service which we want to expose using our existing gateway. So we will use this command line here, but you can use anything to automate Kong. You can use curl scripts. You can use, as I will do, HDPy, which is a similar tool, but a little more fancy than that. You can use your Ansible script. You can use GitHub Actions, the Azure pipeline. You can use Insomnia. Whatever is able to make an HTTP call is able to make a call to Kong, configure it, and then you create services, routes, plugins, consumers, and so on. So let's do that here as a first hands-on thing. So we have here a running installation on my local host. So I can just say, I want to create a new service. So I'm going to the /services endpoint on my sim. I want to call it my service. And there's a URL. So we want to take something like an open endpoint in the internet. We will just take http.org. And we just say we want to get that in our system. So we have already created a service in our gateway. And then we go ahead and we want to also get a route so someone can access it. So we say for that service, we want to create a route, and the path would be something like my service, for example. So this automation, that we can create services and routes which are then already active. So we can just verify that by just looking if this is working, going to our proxy and check if we do have the my service endpoint answering in our proxy, and indeed it does. So we're getting it from Kong in there. This has been groundbreaking when we released Kong initially. This is the first major thing why people come to Kong when they think about automation. Everything's an API, and we really mean everything. But times have changed. Yeah, this is still an awesome feature, but it's the so-called imperative way of configuring things. So where you specify exactly, I want to have this service, I want to have this route, exactly now, please do it right now. That's called imperative. So we go ahead, and nowadays we talk more about the idea of what is about a declarative configuration. Yeah, everything nowadays, what you do everywhere is not a REST API anymore with configuration. It's about YAML files. Think about it. Everything, everywhere, every kind of automation tool nowadays has switched to a YAML file configuration, which is called declarative, because we just explain what we want to make as a result. And then the system has to see how it comes to that. To do so, there's a tool which we also provide as open source next to Kong, so you can put it into your machine where you're running your CI/CD pipelines. This tool is called DEC. DEC, by the way, Declarative Configuration of Kong, that's what it stands for, is a tool where you can configure Kong completely based on a YAML file. I have a very short version of a YAML file here, where you can see here, I want to create, obviously, a service to the same backend system, and I want to create a new route in here. What you do is you use this DEC file and then configure Kong using it. So let's do that. I have this YAML file here on my local hard disk, and you can just say DEC sync, yeah, based on which YAML file, and we do have here this YAML file which you are just seeing here, and then you can specify if you want to override everything, or if you want to say only a specific subpart should be overwritten. Yeah, we can have tags everywhere, as you might know in Kong. So we say, I only want to create a new definition in here. What we have gotten now is another service in Kong and another route in Kong. And it's the same instance, so we can still use the REST API and see which services do we have. And we will see we do have here our YAML service, and we do have the original my service which we created using the REST API. So the same system, you can define what makes the most sense for you configuring it, maybe even doing a mixture, maybe one department does it one way, the other one is the other way. So it's the same system, just a different way which you can use additionally to configure Kong. So how do we get such files? Yeah, we can create a manual. We can go ahead and, as I just did, create that file in a manual way, because I know the format. It's quite easy, quite readable, and I can just add anything I want in there, plugins, consumers, whatever is in there. A second way to get such a file would be we can also use the DEC tool and say, please dump me the current configuration of that cluster to my local hard disk. I just say DEC dump. What I'm getting now is a combined YAML file of everything available in my cluster. So I could, for example, see here, I do have here my service I created with the my service, the REST API, yeah, with this corresponding route. And then we see here, I do have here the YAML service that just created using the YAML file. And I can change things here. For example, I can go ahead and say my service, I want to change that it's also available using my REST created service, for example, so that should have two listeners. The DEC tool has more things like DEC diff. Yeah, what would change? If I apply that one, it will say, okay, I will update that exactly one thing. Yeah, this path will be added in here, and DEC sync will sync that back into my running cluster. This is the way how I would say nowadays in a fresh installation and a new engagement I have with customers, everybody wants to go. So the imperative way using the REST API is something which you can do things very quickly and try it out. But in real world CI/CD pipeline, that happens normally based on the DEC YAML format. But still, yeah, if you look at our topic today, I have not spoken about OpenAPI so far. So where do we get that OpenAPI from? Where do we get an OpenAPI into such an installation? So let's go to the next step. Let's say we want now to use, oh, there's one more thing. And you can do the same thing with Kubernetes Ingress resources. Also YAML files, yeah, same idea, concept, services described in there, and then you would use instead kubectl apply. So whatever you prefer, you can do it. So let's talk about our main topic, OpenAPI to Kong. So this is a typical OpenAPI. I just have used a very typical pet store one to give you an example which everybody knows. It tells me where's my backend servers, and that backend has a path/pets, for example. So how do we get this one into Kong? Well, we provide you with a library for that. There's a library which you can get as an NPM. So let's have a look at this one. Where you get a library. Where's my link going? Maybe my link is OpenAPI to Kong. Let's take this one. No, documentation. Dependencies. At least it here is. So we have all the documentation also available in here, where you can automate the processing of an OpenAPI into a YAML file Kong understands. And you can do that for both the YAML format from DEC, but also for the Ingress controller. So that would be a way, yeah, you write your own program, your own library, and then say, I'm using this library, which then auto-translates the OpenAPI into the Kong format. But we are not stopping there. So we are eating our own dog food. This library is for you if you want to make it in the way you preferred. But the next step is here that we provide another open source tool to you, which is called Insomnia. For those not knowing about Insomnia, it's most known for being an OpenAPI editor and an OpenAPI test tool, REST API and GraphQL test tool in the end. So let me show you what Insomnia looks like to give you a first feeling, and then we will look how we can use this tool to get from an OpenAPI, where we have described the servers, the paths, and even plugins, to services, route, and plugins in our Kong world. So first of all, Insomnia available at insomnia.rest as the homepage. If you want to download it, you just go there and get it there. So Insomnia gives you, first of all, an editor for an OpenAPI file. This editor, you can use to create one, to validate one, to visualize everything which is available in there. It helps you to do things right. So for example, if you mistype something, it will tell you have mistyped something in there. That's the first use case of Insomnia. For us, the first important use case is here on that small triangle. We have here an OpenAPI file, and we have here an option to say, please export that OpenAPI to declarative configuration. So we're getting here a file understood by DEC, the tool we have used recently, or we see here, we get Kubernetes Ingress resources, which can also be done. So we can just say, I'm having an OpenAPI, I'm copying that to my clipboard, and then putting it on my local hard disk, and then I can use DEC to sync that into my Kong installation. That we will see in a second. But before we do so, some more things. We are talking about automation, and we do have here an OpenAPI. Can we do more automation than just configuring Kong? And the answer is yes. And we can use this OpenAPI as a source for manual testing. So if you go here on the debug tab, you can see all the requests which are available from the specification. So you can just click, I want to see them by text, and I get find by text. I want to find it by ID. I'm getting here by ID, and I can just make calls, and I'm getting here, for example, that pet ID number 9. Now I've set it here up in my test environment. I'm getting here kind of status salt, for example. Next to that, I can create tests, meaning I can just say a new test, live. I want that test being on the endpoint of deletes the pet, and then I can see getting out the right response, whatever is in place in here. So we can do tests. I do here tests, for example, I pass, is there a status property, and is the status and this one, in fact, sold. And they see, yes, it's status sold, as we have just seen in our manual tests. Yeah, we just saw it's status sold. And that's exactly what our tests are doing here. I will come back to that. Why is that important later? But now let's think about, again, we are exporting here declarative configuration and can copy it. Nobody wants to click such things. Yeah, in a pipeline, you want to make that automatically. So we will, instead of using this copied version, do the next thing. Yeah, we do have not only Insomnia, which can do that all. They have just seen its creators. There's the next one, which is called inso-cli. Inso-cli, same homepage, once again, insomnia.rest, is the command line version of Insomnia, having basically the same functionality. So I've just put in here the inso help. So for example, it can do a lint checking, or another example, it can generate a deck file or a Kong Ingress resource file in here by just using those parameters. So the same thing which we just did with clicking it in an automated flow would be something like that. I want to generate a configuration. Then I have to define which OpenAPI file I want, and then which output file I want to have. So I go ahead and go into my OpenAPI folder. Yeah, I do have here this pet store with kiosk, the one we have just seen in our example in Insomnia. And I just execute that command. And I'm getting automatically now a new file as defined here, pet store deck import. If you look at this, let's look at pet store deck import. You can see we are getting the now already known to us format of deck, where we're getting services, and we're getting all the different routes extracted from that OpenAPI file. It's a parameter you can set if you want to create a deck file or if you want to create a Kong Ingress resource. So we are going now with a deck example, but it's just the flow itself is the same. You just generated getting the Ingress resources, and then you would make a kubectl apply. We instead will now use the deck tool to import that. We have now imported that into we will now import that into our installation. So we have created that file, and now we now use this newly created file and import it into our running Kong cluster again. So what is the command? It is deck sync. Sync it into my running installation. But that's the source file. And here I will also set some text so they can later on auto apply configurations to them. So you can see we have created one service called Swagger Pet Store. We have here multiple routes for all the different find pets by status and so on based on the OpenAPI file. And we even have one plugin in here. So why is the plugin in there? You might remember that we have the ability here. I said on the post call, you have this x-kong minus plugin special tag. This you can use for any plugin. I see questions already. I will answer them later in more detail, but you can use any plugin in here. Any plugin can be used. And then you can just say, for example, here config, and then you would say parameter 1 is value whatever. So anything you would configure on a plugin, you can do also here for any plugin. And you can define them globally as also here as I do here on the route level. So that's what has happened. We have created all those different passes as routes in Kong. And they should work now. So let's test them. For testing, Insomnia, once again, is a nice tool. We can just say we do have different environments, and we have the live one at Pet Store, which we have used before. Now I can go to localhost. So my base URL is now, in fact, switching to my localhost installation. And I can say, can I now do the same call again against localhost? And yes, it's localhost. We can see it's coming through Kong, via Kong in the end here. And also you can run, once again, the same tests if you want against the local one, and still we get everything is passed. So that's already a fully imported configuration out of an OpenAPI file. We cannot use it manually. You can just say, give me on my proxy pets the ID, let's say 8. pet without an S. Pet 8. Pet 8 is not available, but pet 9, as we know, is an available one. So it's a live one proxied by Kong, and the only source of truth we had was the OpenAPI file in the beginning. So we have seen that we have something about the plugin attached. So let's validate that. So we have seen it was defined in the OpenAPI on the post endpoint. So if someone wants to create something in that, he needs to have an API key. So if I try to post something in here, our API will deny it because we say there is no API key in place. This all is affect everything we need to do. Yeah, we have the full flow already up and running now. So if we look at the full flow, how it could look like, I do have here created a small bash script. The first thing is something I have not even shown, that I can also do, for example, validations. The Insomnia tool command line can do the same things as the big window desktop application. So I can, for example, check, is this a valid OpenAPI file? If it would not be a valid OpenAPI file, the whole flow would make no sense. We could just stop our implementation here. Then we can run the same tests. We have just seen, where we have just seen that we have this all passing. Then we are generating using into-generate config our deck file, and then we are circling that into our running cluster. And this is a typical example how customers are using the whole flow. So I can just do the same thing from OpenAPI to Kong, that everything we have just done, we are checking, is it a valid OpenAPI file? We are running the same tests in here, and we already have imported this one. So it is, in fact, nothing has to be imported anymore in here. That is the pure magic. The combination of inso-cli and deck will provide you a full automated workflow from an OpenAPI to Kong. As a last thing, everything I have shown you, I have created a small GitHub repository. I will share the link in a second. Everything on my GitHub, where all the examples, the OpenAPI files, the script we have just been running, the deck commands, everything we have seen, including the slides we have just seen here, is available. So if you just look at this one in here, you are getting on GitHub all the YAML files, the example YAML file we have used for the first deck explanation. We see all the OpenAPI file. We even see an example for the Ingress controller, which we have not really touched on right now. But if you want to go the Ingress way instead, you can use this one. And then we have all the OpenAPI files. One without a plugin configured, one with a plugin configured, and then the whole flow we have just run automatically as a bash script, plus in the end, the same slides as we have just seen here on our call. So that's what I wanted to show you today. For my customers I'm talking regular on, this is the end goal of their automation pipeline, because that means that in the end, they can fully automate everything based on a file everybody understands without them needing to know about Kong at all. You can just say, we are creating an OpenAPI file, and then you can even choose if it's really manually, like written by someone in Insomnia, or if it's coming something from an automated flow like Spring Boot, where you have this /swagger.json endpoint automatically generated by code. Where it's coming from the OpenAPI, we don't care. We just need to have it as a source. You can just have a script curl, download it, and then use inso-cli, convert it, and make a deck import in there. So that's what's the full flow. And I see we have quite some questions. But before we do so, I will just post this link in here in the chat, all materials here. And now we have a look at the questions we have gotten.
Thank you so much, Sven. That was awesome. Let's start with the Q&A section. I think most of the questions are there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we do have the question here, looking at the YAML configuration makes me wonder if there are SDKs for Kong. Are there any such SDKs for Kong? There's not a direct SDK for creating the YAML file. So you have tools like we just have seen the OpenAPI to Kong, which auto-generate those files, but you can also use Kong, as we have just seen, to generate examples. I have customers putting something in a Kong gateway, a short-living instance, and just dumping that configuration and then use that as a basement for that. The second question is about Insomnia can manage complex Kong plugins like OpenAPI Connect. Indeed, it can. Any plugin can be configured using there. So if you want to see some more complex examples, which I have in mind here, like the OpenAPI Connect one, which I have not shown today out of the reason we are focusing today on open source. And I do not want to show you enterprise plugins, but you can do really here config configurations like client ID, client secret, claims, redirect URLs, anything like that. URLs, everything which is configurable on a plugin can be attached here to this configuration. If you just say config and then all the parameters available, all plugins can be configured in there. Do DAG work with Kong Ingress Controller or only with services routes? DAG and Kong Ingress Controller are two different ways to achieve basically the same, so they do not work with each other. Yeah, they just do this similar things on different locations. DAG is the tool to configure Kong regardless where Kong is running. You can use Kong to configure, use DAG to configure Kong on an EC2 instance. You can run it on a virtual machine locally. You can do it on a Kubernetes cluster. Wherever you have access to the administration API of Kong, you can use DAG to configure Kong. The Ingress controller, with the same idea, is for the Kubernetes Ingress resources only. So you can choose which one you prefer. I have even customers doing both. They say they do have APIs running in Kubernetes. For those APIs, they're using the Ingress controller to configure everything what is already in that Kubernetes cluster. But they also do have then APIs being outside of the Kubernetes, where they say we still have some older APIs which we still want to use Kong, and then they use DAG to configure those even an extra. Okay, next questions. Can you clarify something about DAG? If you save your config as individual file, a service with its routes and plugins, do you have to pass all of the files to DAG sync, or do you have to have everything tagged first? If you have a DAG dump or a handwritten DAG file, and you make a DAG sync without any tags, and you can provide the tags both in the YAML file, or as I just did in my example, I have put them into the sync command. So if you look here at the command we have been using in here, I put it here in the select tag in here, but it can also be in the YAML file itself. If you don't do that, if neither of those is set, Kong will see this as a full new configuration and replace everything in your cluster. So never make a DAG sync without any tags if you do not want to resync everything in your cluster. Having tags is something crucial for you. Otherwise, if you say you want to change one thing, you have to just put one DAG file in there, and you have already 99 services applied in there. If you don't have any tags in place, 99 get deleted and you get one afterwards in the cluster. So be careful, always have tags when working with it. You can also generate them from the OpenAPI, for example. That's something many customers do. Or in a CI/CD pipeline, you can also auto-generate them, maybe based on the GitHub repo name or something like that. But have tags attached. Otherwise, everything gets synced and maybe wiped. Next one. Does Kong provide any tools for fuzzy testing APIs? Dennis Daniels, can you go on microphone and give me some insight what you mean by fuzzy testing here?
Audio check.
Yes, hello.
Hello. I was wondering about the being able to throw fuzzy tests or fuzz testing using your tool to verify whether or not the API is going to respond properly or respond correctly if somebody's trying to attack the API or manipulate the API in an undesired manner. So fuzz testing fuzz testing to make sure that nobody, that the API is resilient to people who are trying to poke it to do something bad?
Yeah, there are two answers to that question. The first one, so there is no artificial intelligence doing fuzzy things on our side, but as you have seen on the side while deploying it, yeah, you have those tests here, which can be as complex as you want. Oh, that's the other one. That's the one we have just worked on time now. So we have here all those tests, and they can be as complex as you want. You can inject here anything that's in the JavaScript, where you can be very creative on your tests, what you would do, but there's no auto artificial stuff in there. That's the one side of the coin, so that we can make sure that we test it before we deploy it. The second thing, and that's another thing which I on purpose have not shown because it's an enterprise feature, we can also make sure that everything which is incoming conforms to the standards having been defined in the OpenAPI file. So for example, in this here, I do have here parameters, and those parameters are in, where are they? They are type integer and they are query parameter, or they are in the path and all things of integer between 0 and 10. This information you can provide in the OpenAPI. And down here, you see I'm enabling here another plugin called the request validator. And the only thing I'm doing is I'm activating it. I'm not configuring it. I'm just saying, please do it. And Insomnia or inso-cli will automatically say, okay, I know this plugin. I will generate the corresponding JSON schema definition for the plugin called request validator. And then every call which is incoming will be validated against the schema and say, if you're not providing an integer between 0 and 10, the gateway itself will already deny that call before it even hits the backend system. If you want, I can show that at the end. I do not want to show an enterprise feature in here because this request validator plugin is an enterprise only plugin. So I can show it if you want at the end. Hi Sven, how to configure Kong plugins using OpenAPI specification? I think we have seen that now in multiple locations, and we just say x-Kong-plugin and then minus, that's the name of the plugin. And then we have all the parameters below it. Share a recent business case of how Kong with DEC was used. Business cases, oh, I like that one. Yeah, in general, we have many customers which are more and more saying, OpenAPI is the central point of truth for everything. It's about this specification before they even code. It's like a contract in there. So that gets in the direction of quality, and the business case behind is that nothing goes wrong with developing. So that they say, we know in advance what we want, and we don't have this typical cycle between business wants, develop something different and back and forth. So we can just say, okay, we have agreed on that one, so it's taken in there. So the business case here is a shorter cycle on the creation. The DEC one then is shrinking down, first of all, the CI/CD pipeline. So it's way more easy because you already have that OpenAPI file. So you don't need to have special tools you need to create and people being trained. Yeah, that's also cost block in there. Trained to use Kong, even though Kong is way easier than any other gateway in the market, you still have to learn something to use. So if you use OpenAPI, no training of admins is needed at all. And that brings me to the last and biggest cost-saving thing. That means you can roll out all your APIs to the Kong gateway basically without doing anything. You just need to have, if you have OpenAPIs, which you normally should have already, you can just completely roll out the Kong gateway configuration from your existing one. So migration use cases are very thankful thing for that. We just say, if you have your API, just make a pipeline, push them into Kong, and you have all of them running in Kong in there. So it's, in the end, it's all about agility and time to market, which are the use cases behind DEC in here. Is there a way to use the Kong library Insomnia without adding annotations to an OpenAPI file? Otherwise, we create annotations between OpenAPI and Kong. Yes, there's a second way to do so. So you can say, I want only have to have a vanilla OpenAPI file, like my, the one without a plugin. So I have it even here as an example in that folder. So I look here at that, the vanilla pet store YAML file, there is no plugin configuration there. if you want to do it in that way, yeah, you need to somehow auto-generate the plugin configuration on another way from your CI/CD pipeline, wherever it's coming from. And the important part would be here, then you would say the pet store deck, and you would say another one, say my plugin configs.yaml. Where then it is coming from, that's up to you, yeah, but you can have multiple source files in one deck sync command, and this then would only host the Kong specific things, and that would only host the ones coming from OpenAPI, but they would be seen as one import and then would be synced in one go. Hi, for existing APIs configured on Kong, is there any tooling that could take the config and create OpenAPI specs? In fact, we have done that in the past. So there was a tool in our enterprise offering where we had a tooling where we did it the other way around. We have decided to discontinue this, I think, a year ago, something like that, because let's all be honest, all the generated OpenAPI files, which are not coming from the code, yeah, the code knows a lot. The gateway knows about routes and parameters maybe, but not really details about it. They were just not quality enough. So we have said there's no real value. So we had them in place. We have customers using them. They got their OpenAPI files, but the real world usage was saying, okay, yeah, okay, it's maybe even easier to start writing it from scratch than starting with a skeleton where we have to do anything manual. So we have discontinued that features because it was not a real world feature we used. Could you talk about the benefits of using Deck versus Terraform? Well, it's not an either or. So many people are using the Deck tool in their Terraform script somewhere. If you have an automation flow where already auto-generating all configurations for Kong in a Terraform, yeah, if it's already in place, go ahead with that. If you say it's better use CI/CD pipeline, go ahead. With Deck, what you get out of the box is a functional tool which already has all the sync capabilities in Kong up and running. So you don't need to take care of the Kong part at all because that's already done. So it's not a hard decision. It's what fits better your infrastructure and your needs. Any support for schema validation? I just talked about it, and I said I will show that maybe in the very end. It's an enterprise feature, but yes, then we have a schema validation in place, also based on the OpenAPI file. Can we integrate portal deployment? Yes. Another enterprise feature. I see here a pattern. Everything in Kong is an API. So the portal deployment at the end. So if we look at here our we do have here our pet store file, for example, the OpenAPI file in there. You can use this one and just say in our Kong portal. Let me just validate I have one enabled because I was not ready to look if I should get an enterprise feature, but it should be one there, right? You see, is there an enterprise portal up and running on my machine? Yes. So we do have here an example one was in there. And then I can just go ahead and say, I'm accessing in an automated flow this developer portal and say, please update the specification also to documentation purposes. I would just say, put it in a path called specs. Let's stay with the same name. And then also get the contents from that file. So that's something outside of Deck. That's something that we have everything as an API, so we can update the documentation in our developer portal. And I see Swagger might be a bad example because I already have Swagger examples here with Swagger Pet Store, but you see there's a second one now. On version 1.0.0, one version 0.2. Which one have we just uploaded? Pet Store Deck import. So we have just uploaded the version with 1.0.2. That's the one we just uploaded in there. So yeah, that's something we typically do in a full flow, where we go from the OpenAPI, from the design phase up to the documentation phase in the same script. Next one. Could you discuss role of Kong developer portal in conjunction with or without use of config language such as Deck? Yeah, developer portal is about documentation, as we can see here. It's about documentation and getting the people to know how it works. That can be based on the same OpenAPI file. So, but the deck is configuring the gateway, so it does the enforcement of routes and services, whereas the developer portal is about documenting to the outside world. So that is why how they work together, and there is no hard linkage. So we can have files using deck for the gateway, but there's no must-have in the dev portal, and also not the other way around. Yeah, next one. With Insomnia, is it possible to manage multiple spec files within the same Git repository? No, it's one workspace, so it's one Git repository per project. But it's one Insomnia, many different documents can be deployed, but it's different Git repositories. So typically also one OpenAPI file belongs to one backend, and that has the same repository normally. How are you handling the publicly exposed Swagger? We have just seen that a little bit. There's something you need to do in between. Yeah, we just have published now the OpenAPI file just to the developer portal. The one thing you need to do is somehow exchange the host name at least, depending on which you prefer. I use for that a tool called YQ. YQ is like JQ for those knowing that one too, a tool which you can use to on the fly exchange values in a YAML file. So I have in my CI/CD pipeline, one of the steps is that I take the OpenAPI file and exchange the internal hostname with the external gateway hostname, and then I'm exporting it to the dev portal. Next one. There are some cases where we use regex expressions in Kong route to restrict the access. Can it be configured using inso? Yes, kind of. It depends on how they look like. For example, let's see here our pet store again. We have here all those different paths in there, and there should be hopefully something. Yeah, we have here pet ID. Yeah, pet/pet ID. If you look at that route, and I've used the Kong manager to visualize that. Yeah, so if you look at that created route on our service, so we have our Swagger pet store, and look at the route. Which one did we have? It was get by ID, find pets by text, by status. Give me all of them. Get by ID. Get pet by ID. Then our route automatically extracts that it needs to be here a value in there, which you can use then for extract information. So we are using here a regular expression automatically and extracted the data and can do then later on something with that. So closing once again, enterprise feature only manager. Next one, where can we find documentation of what Inso can do with Kong plugins? For example, the validation plugin we just saw, how can we configure out the Insomnia, create the configuration by also going to drive the plugin. Thanks. Yeah, that is in fact, and I'm not sure why NPM is not rendering this right now. That is all documented here on that page, but somehow the npm.js.com page has some issues. And the issues are solved. We just have to wait long enough. Here's everything explained. How to work with plugins. Here it talks about the request validator plugins. How about security? How can I make OAuth2? Correct. So all the things which are done are documented here also on the page. I'm not sure why npm.js.com just did not run it, but everything is clearly explained how that works, how tags are handled, and they are under the hood. Do you have also to use your pipeline to sanitize the Kong config out of the OpenAPI? Sanitizing, you mean if you want to remove the x-Kong plugin things? The answer is yes. So we are not touching the OpenAPI itself. So you can do something like I just did with YQ, which everything which starts with x-Kong, yeah, just remove that in one go. And the last one, and then we will, as an extra bonus, do the request data one. Hi, do customers typically expose separate developer portals for internal? Oh, that's a really enterprise question. Separate developer portals for internal users versus external users. Anything in deck or other config to tag what is internal versus external? Two questions. It depends. Customers either have one or two of them that you can do it in one dev portal. based on the permission structure that you say everybody gets to say dev portal, but not everybody sees everything. So internal users just see more than that. Many customers want to have it hardly cut just out of regulations. They say they want to have an external developer portal and an external internal developer portal. The deck configuration has nothing to do with the dev portal. The deck configuration is about the gateway configuration, not the developer portal configuration. Okay, that was the last one. And now, as promised, one more thing about that you see a live example how we can use the validation in there. And I do have this other UID generator service in here, where we see we have this plugin enabled, and we do have some, for example, delay parameter between 0 and 10. So this is an example I have laying somewhere else. I might also put it later on the GitHub for you that you can also see that. 9 CICD. And I'm doing a similar one where I'm going through publishing it to Kong, running all the tests. We have just seen it in the other examples. And then I'm making here inso-generate and then deploying everything to my Kong installation. So what has happened now in my Kong manager? I'm getting now for this one here a new service called UID generator service. Yeah. With all the query, delay, get, and so on. And then delay, yeah, the one we just looked at, we get automatically attached the request validator plugin that is coming from this small tag. Yeah, we want to have it enabled. And then Inso has generated automatically the schema, which can have a body schema. That was a question we had also previously. We can also do it on a body. We can see parameter schema. We say there's a delay parameter. It's required. Why is it required? It says here it's the path. It's required true. So we're extracting it from the OpenAPI. It's in the path, and it should be an integer between 0 and 10. And we can just try that out. We can go ahead and make some calls and say, we say HTTP on our proxy /delay. The first thing say without the delay, we don't even say it's a valid call. Yeah, if we can. We say delay /AAA. We say, okay, this is not conform to the schema. Then we can try 1, 2, 3, which is more than 10. Yeah, so also not conform to the schema. And then if you go with 1, we are getting a response back. So we can make all those checks based on the OpenAPI file. By the way, the last one more thing in here, if you say, I want to be more helpful than that to my users, you can configure how the plugin should behave. So I can just go ahead and change the behavior of that plugin now manually, but you could also automate it. Obviously, you can just say, give them some more hints. Yeah. And then it will tell, by the way, it needs to be smaller than 10. So it's a little bit security discussion. Do you want to give those hints to developers or not? If you want, just say wrong or right. Yeah, that's the one setting. And the other one, if you want to be really helpful to developers, you can just say, okay, we tell you what you did wrong against the schema. Okay, that has been a lot of questions. Any more questions? We will open now the microphone here as far as I know. So any direct interaction is now very well welcome.
Thank you, Sven, for answering all those questions so quickly. And thanks, everyone, for all of your questions. Really, really awesome ones. Let's see if we have any last ones. Please feel free to raise your hand. I will unmute you if you want to ask a question or drop it in the Q&A section. All right. Well, I think that's all for today. Thank you very much, Sven. What an awesome presentation. Thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you in our August user call next month, and have a great day, great evening. See you next time.
See ya. Cheers.
Bye. Bye-bye.